I'm Dr. Helen Rostova, 27, female. I live in a city that values history, which is perfect for a history professor like me. My life was a carefully curated collection of successes, a PhD at 25, a tenure-track position at a respected university, and a beautiful brownstone I shared with my husband, Alex. He was the brilliant financial analyst, the charismatic other half of our power couple. From the outside, we had it all, but I was about to learn that the most pristine facades can hide the most rotten foundations. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Our life was a symphony of mutual support. I'd spend my days lecturing on the fall of ancient empires and my evenings listening to Alex talk about market trends and corporate conquests. He was ambitious, a rising star at one of the city's top investment firms, working directly under the legendary managing director, Catherine Vance. Catherine was a shark in a designer suit, sharp, relentless, and a woman Alex deeply admired. He often said, "If you want to succeed, you learn from the best." I thought his dedication was admirable, a sign of his drive to build our future. We had a 5-year plan neatly mapped out. He'd make partner at his firm, I'd get my tenure, and then we'd start a family. Every goal was a stepping stone, every achievement a shared victory. When he called me that Tuesday afternoon, his voice buzzing with an energy I hadn't heard in months, I knew one of those stones had just been laid. "I got it, Helen, the promotion. They're officially making me a senior analyst." I could hear the smile in his voice, the pure, unadulterated joy. I was ecstatic for him. He'd been working grueling hours, sacrificing weekends, all for this moment. "That's amazing, Alex. We have to celebrate." I told him, already picturing his favorite steakhouse. He hesitated for a second. "I can't tonight, babe. Catherine is taking the whole team out. Rain check for tomorrow." A disappointment pricked at me, but I pushed it down. This was his moment, his celebration with his team, of course. I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice, "You deserve it. Have a great time." He promised he wouldn't be too late, and we hung up. I decided my support wouldn't be passive. He deserved more than just a pat on the back. I would surprise him. I'd prepare a lavish dinner at home. His favorite coq au vin, a bottle of the expensive wine we were saving, the works. I imagined him walking in, tired from his team dinner, only to find a private, intimate celebration waiting just for him. It felt like the perfect gesture, a testament to our partnership. Looking back now, the irony is crushing. I was meticulously planning a celebration of a man who was, at that very moment, meticulously planning my destruction. Our perfect life wasn't just a life, it was a lie, and I was the only one who didn't have the script. The afternoon was a blur of happy activity. I finished my last lecture, graded a few papers, and then headed to the market. I bought the freshest ingredients, the best bottle of Bordeaux the shop had, and a small, decadent chocolate lava cake for dessert. By 7 p.m., the aroma of simmering wine and herbs filled our kitchen. The table was set with our best china, candles were lit, and a soft jazz playlist was humming in the background. It was perfect. 8 p.m. came and went. Then 9 p.m., I sent him a text. "Hope you're having fun. Thinking of you." No reply. I told myself it was fine. He was out with his boss and colleagues. It would be rude to be on his phone. By 10 p.m., a knot of anxiety had formed in my stomach. The coq au vin was in danger of overcooking. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Alex was glued to his phone. Another call, half an hour later, yielded the same result. The worry began to curdle into a vague, undefined fear. Maybe something had happened. Maybe I should go to him. I remembered he'd once mentioned his team sometimes went for drinks at a lounge near his office after a big win. It was a stupid, impulsive idea, but I couldn't just sit there. I wanted to see his face, to congratulate him in person, even if it was just for a minute. I packed up a small container with some of the food, grabbed the bottle of wine, and called a cab. I'd just drop it off. It would be a sweet surprise. The cab pulled up to the gleaming glass tower of his office building downtown. The main lobby was dark, but the upper floors were still lit. His was on the 45th. I smiled at the security guard, a friendly man named George who knew me. "Evening, Dr. Rostova. Here to pick up the workaholic." He chuckled, something like that. I smiled back, just dropping off a celebration dinner. He waved me through. The elevator ride up was silent, amplifying the frantic beat of my heart. When the doors opened onto the 45th floor, it was eerily quiet. Desks were empty, monitors were black, the entire floor was deserted. There was no team celebration here. There was no one. Confusion turned to ice in my veins. Where was he? His office was at the end of the hall, next to Catherine's large corner suite. As I approached, I saw a sliver of light from under Catherine's door. Then I heard it, a sound that didn't belong in a corporate office late on a Tuesday night. It was a low, feminine laugh, Catherine's laugh, followed by my husband's voice, soft and intimate. My hand hovered over the doorknob. It wasn't locked. My brain screamed at me to turn around, to go home and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But my feet were rooted to the spot. With a trembling hand, I pushed the door open just a crack, enough to see inside, and there they were. It wasn't a party. It wasn't a meeting. Alex was standing behind Catherine's chair, his hands on her shoulders, leaning in close as she looked at a document on her screen. He kissed the side of her neck. It wasn't a passionate, illicit kiss. It was casual, familiar, terrifyingly normal. The surprise wasn't the dinner I had planned. The surprise was my life falling apart in the silent hum of an empty office. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. My lungs had seized, and the world narrowed to that single, damning image. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the ease with which it was given and received. It spoke of routine, of a long, established intimacy that made my entire marriage feel like a charade. I backed away from the door silently, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I was afraid they would hear it. The container of food felt impossibly heavy, a stupid, pathetic symbol of my naivety. I fled. I don't remember the elevator ride down or saying goodbye to George. The next thing I knew, I was standing on the cold pavement, the city lights blurring through the tears welling in my eyes. When I got home, the scene I had so lovingly created felt like a mockery. The candles had burned low, casting long, dancing shadows on the wall. The rich aroma of the food was now sickeningly sweet. I blew out the candles, scraped the gourmet meal into the trash, and sat in the dark, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Alex came home an hour later. He walked in, humming a cheerful tune, and switched on the lights. He saw me on the sofa, and his smile faltered. "Hey, you're still up. Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with false concern. The smell of Catherine's perfume, a sharp, expensive scent I'd noticed at company events, clung to his suit. I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in a long time. Every feature I thought I knew, the curve of his smile, the light in his eyes, now seemed like a mask. "How was the team dinner?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Oh, it was good," he said, shrugging off his jacket. "Long speeches from Catherine, the usual corporate stuff. I'm exhausted." He was a phenomenal liar. There was no hesitation, no flicker of deceit in his eyes. He was practiced. This skill wasn't new. As a historian, my job was to analyze sources, to look for inconsistencies in the narrative. And my husband's narrative was beginning to unravel. He tried to kiss me, but I turned away. "I'm tired," I said, the excuse tasting like ash in my mouth. He frowned but didn't push it, attributing my mood to his lateness. That night, I lay in our bed, feeling the warmth of his body next to mine, and I had never felt colder or more alone. The betrayal wasn't just physical. A simple affair would have been devastating, but this felt different. The way they were standing over that document, the casual intimacy, it felt less like a secret romance and more like a partnership. A conspiracy. My mind raced, connecting disparate dots. The late nights he'd claimed were spent on projects. The sudden secrecy around his finances, which he'd dismissed as complex work stuff you wouldn't be interested in. The way Catherine had looked at me at the last company gala, not with jealousy, but with something that looked chillingly like pity or maybe contempt. They weren't just sleeping together, they were plotting something. And I was beginning to suspect that I wasn't just the wronged wife, I was the target. The next morning, I went through the motions. I made coffee, pretended to read the news, and acted like the distant, tired wife. Alex left for work, giving me a quick, passionless peck on the cheek. The moment the door clicked shut, I went into action. My grief was still there, a cold, heavy stone in my chest, but it was now overlaid with something else, the sharp, clear focus of an academic researcher. My field of study was espionage and political intrigue in 17th century Europe. I understood deception. I knew how to find the truth buried under layers of lies. My first call was to my best friend, Maya. We'd met during my undergrad, and while I pursued history, she had dived headfirst into the world of cybersecurity. She was brilliant, fiercely loyal, and the only person I could trust with this. I met her at a small, out-of-the-way cafe, and with a shaky voice, I told her everything. She listened without interruption, her expression hardening with every word. When I finished, she didn't offer empty platitudes. She simply said, "Okay, so he's a liar and a cheat. The question is, what else is he? Let's find out." Maya was methodical. She explained that a frontal assault confronting him was pointless. He would just lie more. We needed evidence, hard, undeniable proof. She started with the basics. "Give me his laptop," she said. That evening, while Alex was in the shower, I took his personal laptop from his study. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of him and Catherine in her office. Maya worked from her own apartment, connected to me through a secure channel. It didn't take her long. Alex was clever, but he wasn't a security expert. Within an hour, Maya had bypassed his password. "Helen," her voice came through my headphones, tight with anger. "You were right. This is so much bigger than an affair." She had found a hidden folder, encrypted, but she broke through it. It contained spreadsheets, bank statements, and email chains between Alex and Catherine that went back almost 2 years. They were systematically siphoning money from their firm's client accounts, moving small, almost untraceable amounts into offshore accounts. The total was staggering, well over $1 million, but it was the rest of their plan that made me physically ill. They were setting up a fall guy. In a separate folder, Maya found documents they had forged. They were creating a false paper trail, complete with faked emails and transaction logs that pointed directly to a junior analyst on their team. A young, eager kid Alex had supposedly taken under his wing. Their plan was to let the fraud grow for another 6 months, then trigger an internal audit themselves, leading investigators straight to the innocent analyst and walking away clean. And then I found the file that implicated me. It was a draft of a new will for Alex. In it, he left everything to his beloved wife, Helen. But attached was a life insurance policy, a new one for $5 million that I knew nothing about, and then there were his browser search histories. Untraceable poisons, side effects of common heart medications, how to induce a natural-looking heart attack. They weren't just planning to frame a colleague. They were planning to get rid of me, too. My death would be a tragedy, leaving the grieving, wealthy widower to run off with his boss and their stolen millions. The historian in me recognized the pattern: greed, betrayal, and a ruthless quest for power. My life wasn't a marriage, it was a long con. The world tilted on its axis. The man I slept next to, the man I had promised my life to, was actively researching how to end it. For a few hours, pure, paralyzing terror took over. I wanted to run, to disappear, and never look back. Maya was the one who pulled me back from the edge. "You can't run, Helen," she said, her voice firm. "They're meticulous. They'd find you. Running makes you look guilty. We don't run, we fight. You're a history professor, think like one. How do you defeat an empire? Not by a frontal assault. You dismantle it from the inside." Her words sparked something in me. She was right. I had spent years studying the most intricate plots in history. The gunpowder plot, the conspiracies of the Borgias, the Trojan War, the story of the Trojan horse always fascinated me. A gift that concealed destruction, brought inside the enemy's walls by the enemy themselves. Alex and Catherine saw me as a pawn, a disposable asset. They would never suspect the pawn was about to become the queen. My plan began to form, not with rage, but with cold academic precision. I had 2 key pieces of leverage: the data Maya had uncovered, and the fact that they had no idea I knew anything. Their arrogance was their greatest weakness. First, Maya made multiple encrypted copies of all the evidence and stored them on secure servers. She then set up a dead man's switch, an automated system that would email the entire evidence package to the firm's board of directors, the SEC, and several major news outlets if I didn't check in with a specific code every 12 hours. That was my insurance policy. Next, I needed to play my part. I became the perfect, loving, oblivious wife again. In fact, I became even more attentive. I apologized for being distant, blaming it on stress from the university. I cooked his favorite meals. I listened intently to his stories about work, feigning admiration for his brilliant boss, Catherine. I even suggested we open a new joint investment account, telling him I'd received a small inheritance from a distant relative and wanted him, my financial genius, to manage it. This was the first part of the Trojan horse. The inheritance was actually a significant portion of my own savings. As I predicted, Alex's eyes lit up with greed. He saw it as more capital for his and Catherine's scheme. Within a week, he had moved the money. Meyer and I watched as he funneled it through a series of shell corporations, mixing it with the stolen client funds before sending it to one of their offshore accounts. He was sloppy. He thought I was a naive academic who didn't understand finance. He didn't realize that every transaction was being meticulously logged by us. He was creating a direct, undeniable link between my inheritance and his criminal enterprise. He was building his own gallows. The final piece of the plan was the stage. Their crime was corporate, so their downfall had to be corporate. The firm's annual charity gala was in 3 weeks. It was the biggest event of their year, attended by the board, major clients, and the city's financial elite. Catherine was set to receive a Humanitarian of the Year award. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. That gala, I decided, would be their Waterloo. I would present them with a gift they couldn't refuse, and once they brought it inside their perfectly constructed walls, it would unleash their ruin. I just had to survive the next 3 weeks. I had to sleep next to my wood, be murderer and smile. The night of the gala arrived, cloaked in a deceptive glamour. I wore a crimson dress, a color that felt like a statement of war. Alex, looking handsome and entirely soulless in his tuxedo, couldn't keep his eyes off me. "You look stunning, Helen," he said, his voice a low murmur. "Tonight is going to be a big night for us." He had no idea how right he was. I smiled, a perfectly practiced, loving expression. "For us," I echoed. Walking into the grand ballroom on his arm felt surreal. Hundreds of people, all dressed in their finest, mingled under glittering chandeliers. We made our way to the head table, where Catherine was holding court. She greeted me with a chilly smile. "Helen, so lovely to see you. That dress is very bold." Her eyes scanned me with an air of dismissive appraisal. I met her gaze evenly. "Thank you, Catherine. I thought it was appropriate for a night of big reveals." A flicker of something, confusion, annoyance, crossed her face before she turned away. The dinner was an agonizing performance. I laughed at jokes, made small talk with board members, and played the part of the proud, supportive wife. All the while, my heart was a cold, steady drum. Maya was not at the event, but she was my eye in the sky, monitoring everything from a safe distance. Just before dessert, the event's host took the stage. "And now," he boomed, "it is my great honor to present the Humanitarian of the Year award to our firm's visionary leader, the incomparable Catherine Vance." The room erupted in applause. Catherine walked to the stage, a vision of corporate grace and predatory success. She accepted the heavy crystal award and stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "I am so humbled. I believe that success is not just about what you gain, but what you give back." This was my cue. As she spoke, the 2 large screens on either side of the stage, which had been displaying a looping video of the firm's charity work, flickered. They went black for a second, and then a new image appeared. It was a single spreadsheet, an offshore account ledger. Catherine's voice faltered. She glanced at the screens, her eyes widening in disbelief. Alex, next to me, froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. A confused murmur rippled through the audience. Then the screen changed again, showing an email from Catherine to Alex. The subject line, "The Helen Problem." My voice, calm and clear, cut through the silence. I hadn't moved from my seat, but a small microphone, given to me by a sympathetic AV tech Maya had contacted, was live. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice projecting through the ballroom sound system. "My name is Dr. Helen Rostova. While I applaud Catherine's commitment to humanitarianism, I, as a historian, believe in primary sources." The screens began to cycle through the evidence, bank transfers, forged documents framing their junior colleague, the life insurance policy, and finally, screenshots of Alex's horrifying search history. Gasps filled the room. All eyes were on our table for the past 2 years. I continued, my voice gaining strength. "MS. Vance and my husband, Alex, have orchestrated a multi-million-dollar fraud, but their ambition didn't stop at theft. They also conspired to frame an innocent man and, as you can see, to arrange my unfortunate death for a $5 million payout." I stood up and looked directly at Alex. His face was a mask of chalky white shock and terror. Catherine was frozen on the stage, the award slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. The full evidence package, I announced to the stunned room, has just been delivered to the SEC, the board of directors, and the press. Your empire has fallen. In the ensuing chaos, as security guards began moving towards our table, Alex finally looked at me. The mask was gone. In his eyes, I saw no remorse, no love, no regret, only the cold, bewildered fury of a predator who had been outsmarted. The Trojan horse had been opened. The aftermath was swift and brutal. A corporate demolition played out in the headlines. Before the gala guests had even found their coats, the story was breaking. Alex and Catherine were detained for questioning right there in the ballroom, a humiliating exit in front of the very people they had spent their careers trying to impress. The junior analyst they had planned to frame was immediately exonerated and, with the help of an excellent lawyer paid for by an anonymous donation from me, ended up receiving a massive settlement from the firm for endangerment and defamation. He was safe. That was a victory in itself. The legal battle was long, but the evidence Maya and I had gathered was ironclad. They had built their own prison, brick by digital brick. The direct link from my inheritance of money to their offshore accounts was the final damning piece of the puzzle. They tried to turn on each other, of course. Alex claimed he was manipulated by Catherine. She claimed he was the greedy, unstable mastermind. It didn't matter. Their partnership, forged in greed, dissolved in panic. They were both found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The additional charges related to the plot against my life were harder to make stick in a criminal court, but they hung in the air, cementing their public image as monsters. They both received long prison sentences. For me, the weeks that followed were a quiet blur of legal meetings, police statements, and the slow, painful process of untangling my life from Alex's. I sold the brownstone, a place whose happy memories were now tainted beyond repair. I funneled the proceeds, along with my recovered inheritance, into a foundation I established at the university to fund historical research for students who couldn't otherwise afford it. It felt right, turning money that was intended for such a dark purpose into something that could create knowledge and opportunity. I didn't emerge from the ordeal unscathed. There were nights I'd wake up, my heart pounding, the memory of his search history flashing in my mind. The trust I once gave so freely is now a guarded, precious thing, but I also emerged stronger, with a clearer sense of my own resilience. My friend Maya was my rock, a constant presence who reminded me that true loyalty exists. My work became my sanctuary. Lecturing on the rise and fall of empires felt more relevant than ever. I taught my students that history is not just a collection of dates and facts, but a series of stories about choices. Choices driven by ambition, love, greed, and betrayal. It's a lesson I now understood on a cellular level. One day, about a year later, I was walking across campus when a young student, one of the first recipients of my foundation's grant, ran up to me, her face glowing with excitement about her research trip. In her joy, I saw my future. It wasn't the one Alex and I had planned on a neat 5-year timeline. It was something quieter, more meaningful, and entirely my own. I hadn't just survived. I had reclaimed my narrative. I had closed the book on that chapter of my life and started writing a new one, my own history. And for the first time in a very long time, the future felt limitless.